So the other day, while playing the original Battlefront 2, having just passed the Order 66 mission, and making my way into some of the missions that detailed the early days of the Galactic Empire, it brought up some interesting sort of juxtapositions between the way rebellions against the Empire were presented in Legends versus Canon, and I figured today we could discuss who exactly is rebelling against the Empire. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. Now, I want to be perfectly clear before we get too far into this. I don't mean, like, during the Rebel Alliance, in the later days of the Empire. I mean within the first few years of the rise of the Galactic Empire, who were the rebel factions. In Legends, we often see it being planets we traditionally associate with being sort of good guy planets. These are places like Naboo, for example, which we always see being on the right side of every argument. It actually specifically came to mind because I was playing that mission that depicted a rebellion in Theed shortly after the rise of the Empire. And I realize that that's very, dramatically different from what we see in canon, where these rebellions tend to be pro-separatist worlds, and worlds we would traditionally consider to be sort of the bad guy worlds. Places like Raxus, which was the capital of the CIS. So that sort of raised some interesting points in my mind that I felt like sharing about how the new canon has sort of changed and actually kind of fixed and put some more weight behind the ideas that lead to these very early rebellions. And a lot of this kind of comes back to one centralized idea here, that the rebellions in the early days of the Empire are very, very much tied to the Confederacy of Independent Systems. There are a few elements that were, loyal to the Republic that changed to become rebel entities following the rise of the Empire, but for the most part, most factions and planetary governments that were loyal to the Republic continued that loyalty into the early days of the Empire, seeing the Empire as a direct successor to the Republic, which on paper it was. As such, planets that were fiercely loyal to the Galactic Republic, planets like Naboo, which had close ties to the Republic, were less likely to actually see rebellion as an option, as opposed to instead just siding with the Empire until they finally realized, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing this anymore, and that took some time. Meanwhile, the planets that were already opposed to the Republic just saw the Empire as more of the same, but worse, and instead opted to take up arms, hence why a lot of these early rebellions actually are separatist holdouts. But in Legends, it's a very different picture. Legends is a lot looser, with a lot less sort of binding material holding the sort of universe together, and there was a lot more stories that were a little bit uncoordinated, and you fall into the trap of saying, well, this world is the good guy world, and they just have good morals. The people of Naboo, of course, would instantly see the Empire as a force for evil and take up arms against the Empire. But in reality, the people of Naboo likely saw the Empire as the Republic again. They were probably a bit proud that the emperor of this new empire was from their planet, and ultimately were willing to just sit quietly and see where this led. After all, the galaxy had just come out of a major war. You have to be really motivated to take up arms and start another one. The galaxy is tired. I mean, that's a big part of what happened here, is the galaxy is tired from the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars were exhausting for the people of the galaxy. The immense loss of life and destruction. I mean, once again, it was in between clones and battle droids, but there were a lot of militia forces involved too, and there were a lot of personal tragedies tied to the Clone Wars that didn't involve clones or battle droids. So the galaxy itself had just been through this horrible trauma, so you need a really strong motivator if you're going to jump back into the fray into another fight. And we only see this motivator in those people who feel like they lost the war unjustly, or those who are really, really strongly motivated for independence movements. Places like Ryloth and Onderon, where we see very strong Republic-backed resistance movements to separatist occupation, which, as we see in canon, actually do slide fairly quickly into active rebellions against the Empire following the end of the war. But I just saw this interesting sort of difference between Legends and canon, and I really wanted to point it out. Personally, I think that the canon depiction of it is better. I think it shows more coherence in which sides would actually stand up against the Empire day one, and which sides might be willing to give them a little bit of slack and see where this whole Empire thing leads. And the Empire had a fairly similar mentality about the Separatist holdouts, seeing them as a useful entity that they could use as a boogeyman for those early years of their sort of rise to power. If you'd like to learn more about how the Empire used Separatist holdouts to their advantage, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you prefer the Legends way of depicting this, where, you know, the good guy planets instantly see the evil in the Empire and rise up, or do you like the canon way of depicting it, where it seems to make a little bit more sense, where Republic allied worlds tended to be more accepting of the Empire, where the Separatist worlds were more opposed to it. And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.